The Cuban-U.S. relationship is very much in the news these days. There's plenty of debate and uncertainty. Before any further discussion on diplomatic relations with Cuba, President Trump has called for the return of Joanne Chesimard, who was convicted of killing a New Jersey state trooper in 1973 on the New Jersey Turnpike. Is that feasible, do you think, Governor Whitman?
I think it's feasible, but not problem. It probably will not happen. Let me put it that way. I don't think that we'll see that day. It's a complicated process to bring somebody back, and she is not the only criminal that is being harbored there or has been harbored there over the years. She is the poster child because she did murder a state trooper, Werner Forrester, and his family needs to know that the state really continues to care, but the practical ability to get her back is, I think, slim to none.
Could there be any renewed hope, in your opinion, Governor Florio, given the change in leadership next year in Cuba?
Perhaps, but extradition is a complex concept. Pulling someone out of another country becomes very difficult, unless there's really very good relationships, which I don't foresee in the near future.
During your term in office, did you incentivize in any way to work toward the return or information to get the return of Joanne Chesimard to
Well, there
New
really
Jersey?
weren't many serious overtures to Cuba at that point. This has been something relatively recent. President Obama really was the initiator of what's now a little bit of a warming of relationships. I think this is all inevitable, though, because when you have situations where people are making money off of trade, you're not going to undo that very easily. The agricultural community loves Cuba. They unload plenty of food there. So you're not going to have a lot of support for going back to where we were.
Was there outreach during your administration, Governor Whitman?
Well, we increased the monies that were available for people someone who could bring her back or give us more information on how to get to her. But beyond that, it was more a gesture as much as anything. To say, look, we still care, to say to the family of the slain trooper that we still remember, we're not going to forget, and we're going to do what we can, but the likelihood of we didn't really expect anything much to come of it, unfortunately, because it just wasn't going to. And we didn't have the kind of relationship at all with Cuba at that point where we were talking to them in a way that might have led to an extradition.
Recent polls have shown that a larger and growing number of Cuban Americans want closer ties with Cuba. Yet we have important political leaders in Washington with Cuban American ties. Our own Senator Bob Menendez, our Congressman Albio Series, and Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who are dead set against this. What is your take on that and why that divide continues in such a strong way, Governor?
I think younger people don't have a vivid recollection of the trauma that many of the people who initially left Cuba when Castro came in have. And so younger people don't have that recollection. They're looking for opportunities. There's sort of a romanticism of going back to the homeland. I suspect it's inevitable that just by virtue of the generations changing, we'll be ultimately having much better relationships with Cuba.
I think if you want to be a cynic, some of the representatives you see who are so anxious not to have this opening, it's older people vote and the younger ones don't. And they tend, because as the governor said, the younger people, they're passionate but not in the same way, with this same intensity as those who went through the worst of the communist years and who escaped to get away from an extraordinarily oppressive government. And so they really are passionate, and they are the ones who are reaching out to their representatives and saying, you cannot forget us. And that's understandable.
An interesting discussion. Thank you for your views.